Good morning, everyone. This is Cynthia Motters. Welcome to AmP&x. Just a little brief intro for those joining for the first time. AmP&x is a brand that is shining a light on abuse. And we have a podcast where we have various speakers come on. Some of them talk about their abusive relationships, and we hope that you can learn from that and takeaways and learn and spot the red flags. And then other guests, like our guest we're going to talk to today, can help you with tools and tips and maybe how to learn that you're in a toxic relationship, maybe how to get out of it. What do you keep doing that keeps, having you be in these relationships? So like and subscribe to our channel. Today's guest is Stephanie Mcphail. Did I pronounce that right, Stephanie?
Yeah, you did. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah. And Stephanie has all about toxic relationship recovery expert, where I guess basically being in love shouldn't hurt. It sounds so simple, doesn't it, Stephanie? But yet we get ourselves in these situations.
Mm-hmm.
And you also wrote a book, right?
Yep.
Being love shouldn't hurt. That's the title, I think.
Yep. Yep. That's the name of my book and my workbook.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit too. But basically, this is, about helping women heal, transform, and thrive after being in a toxic relationship. So I think if we could just start, and maybe this is not an easy question, but how do we define a toxic relationship to know we're kind of in one? I think that's the first step, right?
Sure. So one of the things and first of all, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I think this is such an important mission to be on because, as someone myself who is in toxic relationships, you feel so isolated and alone when you're dealing with it. So I appreciate all the work that you and your partner are doing. When I define toxic relationships, I have to say that I stopped using as often. I still do sometimes, but I stopped using narcissistic abuse and all these other things that are the big words that people hear all the time. Those are the key words. People talk about that stuff all the time. But the problem that I found for myself is that I had a background in psychology. And as a businesswoman and a professional, we're very good at doing research. We're very good at finding out what the problem is and how we can fix it. Right. And so I became really good at researching what's narcissism, what's borderline personality, what is sociopaths. So I had all this expertise in that, but that didn't help me with the fact that I was living with someone who was abusive. It didn't help me at all. I knew all the things, but it didn't help me at all. So I define a toxic relationship as a relationship that when you are in it, you feel yourself drained and you don't feel inspired to be yourself. So if you're noticing, and it's really easy to think of it that way, like, hey, I'm with people. It can be in your workplace, in your romantic relationships, in your friendships. I hang out with them. I feel depleted. I don't feel good. And when you're a healthy person, you want to work on your health. You want to stay away from those types of feelings. You can't help it all the time, obviously. But if you are noticing your body and you are feeling, this feels uncomfortable, this doesn't feel right, you want to do less of that and do more of the feeling good stuff.
Because really a healthy relationship, I think your partner should be uplifting you, should be there to support you, should be making you feel good when you're down. So to your point, if you're coming into a relationship and you're feeling drained and tired and not supported, yeah, as simple as it sounds, that could be toxic and lead to many other things.
Well, and that's what happens a lot of times is that we say, well, am I in an abusive relationship? Because I didn't think I was in an abusive relationship, and my husband strangled me on my wedding night, my first husband.
Is this what led you to your path that you're on now?
Yeah. And so he wasn't the first toxic relationship. I think that kind of followed me from childhood and then just kept going. So like my book, Being Love Shouldn't Hurt, is all about relearning what love should feel like. So for me and most of my clients, love feels uncomfortable, stressful, overwhelming, and we fight for that. Because that's what we're used to. That's what love has become. That's what home feels like. So when we find that, we're like, oh, look, we're in love. This is what I'm looking for. Yeah. Even though consciously we're like, that sounds awful, but subconsciously we feel comfortable in the discomfort of it.
Because we grew up with it, or because we're conditioned. I guess that relates to you having maybe not a good childhood, right? You're carrying that through in your relationship.
Most of the time. Now, what I find in that too is that I do have extremes where I have most of my clients, I would say, they learned it from childhood. There was something going on at home, and this is what they brought into their future relationships. I do have some clients where it was like textbook, almost perfect, leave it to beaver type of family. Yeah. And in that, when I see that direction, it ends up being that those kids that became adults were too trusting and didn't get the coping mechanisms to say, hey, I can't trust everybody. And they still don't have good boundaries. So the pendulum kind of swung in the opposite direction. So the parents did a great job, but they missed out on the fact of understanding that they needed to have boundaries and be able to speak up for themselves and all of that. So I do.
And then there's people pleasers. They always want to please. So they're putting themselves sort of in the back seat and they're not looking at things clearly.
Well, and women, we are much more often people pleasers. We want to be able to calm things down. We want everyone to be happy. We'll put our needs on the back burner to do all of that. But in doing so, we lose ourselves in the process. And we end up putting up with things for way too long that we shouldn't be, because we think that we have to in order to be a good mom, a good woman, a good friend. We don't say anything. And so we become pretty passive until some of us blow up, or we just keep letting her, I always say we have a lot of empaths, and an empath without boundaries is a doormat. Right. So if you're going to be walked all over because you're trying to make everybody else happy, you're a chameleon. You haven't actually made everybody else happy, and you feel terrible.
Yeah. Now, were you saying that you had this happen more than once? So were you in a pattern a little bit?
Oh, for sure. And that's where I find, I really see that a lot of us, we have this pattern. Again, it could be any type of relationship that you're in. But a lot of times when people come to me and they say, hey, I was in this toxic relationship, I'm looking to heal, I don't want to do that again, I would like to date again at some point, but I just want to figure this out. We find out that they also, I had a client of mine, she had been working for the same company for like 15 years and was making like, let's say 70K. And after going through the process of dealing with her issue with her romantic relationship, all of a sudden she's like, I think that I need to start looking for another job. And when she did, she got hired at like 3 or 4 times the amount of what she had been paid for the same job. Oh. And they moved her to San Diego. So it was like, and she was in Virginia. So she was like, oh my gosh, like this is a complete turnaround. But it literally started with that. So yeah, for me, it was definitely, I chose unhealthy people. I wanted so badly to feel loved and to be seen. I had been told that, even like growing up sometimes, like, hey, you're too much. And then you start hearing that, then their romantic relationships. And again, strong professional women, sometimes we're too much for people. And that, it's okay. We're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. That's all right.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Right. And we have to own that. Like, that's what it is. But the right partner is going to love and appreciate all those things about you. But when you have low self-esteem, I had confidence, but I didn't have low self-esteem. After continuing in these toxic relationships, my confidence started to plummet. And that's
what was your breaking point? Like, do you mind sharing a little bit of that story? And then like what happened, and then what your aha moment, like, because you're so strong and you're so confident, you're so eloquent and how you speak, and you would never imagine that you had a toxic relationship. So it'd be important to know how you
my current husband and I actually, we work together in helping women heal from toxic relationships. And he says it all the time. He's like, I know you. I can't imagine someone like cursing at you or threatening you. And I was like, yeah, because I'd leave. Like now, this Stephanie now would leave. And he's like, yeah, I know. But again, it's that boiling frog in the water where you keep turning the temperature up. So my aha moment, so I got married to my first husband. On our wedding night, he strangled me.
On your wedding night?
On my wedding night at a castle. We got married at Ohika Castle. It was this beautiful, beautiful place. I had my red flags. I had my reservations, but he was pushy. He wanted to move in right away. He wanted to move very quickly. And again, I'd had other toxic relationships before. And in my mind, I was like, I'm getting older. I would like to be able to have kids. Maybe it's me and there's something that I need to do. Maybe my expectations are too high. I had all those thoughts. And so we got married. He did that. He strangled me on our wedding night.
You must have been devastated, like the most important day of your life. And that happens on the honeymoon, right?
It must have been so so beautiful. Literally went up after the wedding where we had a beautiful day. My family had come from all over. We go to the honeymoon suite. He drew a bath. So I was naked.
Yeah.
I put my foot in the tub, some water spilled out, and he started yelling at me because I didn't care about anything. And I was like, sweetheart, let's not make a good day go bad. Relax. And then for the next 4 hours, he chased me around the honeymoon suite, threatened me, told me it was the worst thing that he had ever done was getting married to me. And then it ended with him throwing me on the 4-post bed and strangling me till I almost lost consciousness.
Oh my God.
And I held myself thinking, oh my gosh, I can't be with this man
You
who
knew,
just tried to kill me on my wedding night.
yeah, but you knew that, or did you try to say, okay, that was just an incident, it's going to be better?
No, I immediately felt that.
Oh, good.
He
okay.
started with I'm so sorry. I was under a lot of stress. It will never happen again. And he knew the right things to tell me because my minister growing up is the one who married me. I had family. My mom's French. I had family from Europe that flew all the way out to come and be at this wedding. I mean, it was all of this stuff that I was so embarrassed.
Yes.
About all of it. Even leaving to get help, I was naked. I couldn't get to my clothes and I could have run out the door. But yeah. I was like, and my husband at the time knew the owners of the castle. So I was still, even in that point, I was thinking about all these different things. And then I was like, I wanted to believe him. Yeah. I wanted to believe that it was going to get better because I just married this man. So I wanted to believe him. But that lasted for 5 years. I threw him out. I let him back in. It was horrific. There was more abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse that happened.
Did you tell anybody, like your parents, that happened on your wedding night?
No. In fact, most of my friends didn't even know until the first interview that I ever did for a podcast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. About a few years after I had done the work and done the healing and realized I needed to share my story. I had friends that called me up and they said they were in their closet crying because they didn't want to be around their kids while they heard the story, and they were shocked. And I think there was one or two that felt kind of bad that I didn't tell them. Yeah. But when you're in it too, I was the one who took care of everybody else. Yeah. So you don't have to worry about me. I'm fine. I'll figure it out. But I was there helping everybody else and not taking care of myself because I didn't want to believe. It wasn't until I actually went in and got an order of protection and I was speaking with a domestic violence helper. Forgot what the court, not court appointed, but through domestic violence, they actually send someone to help me. I'm blank on the name for it, but an advocate, domestic violence advocate. Yeah. She had come in with me and she was asking me what had happened. So I started telling her and I just nonchalantly said, he strangled me on our wedding night. And the look of horror went across her face because this is one of the things too, for anyone who's listening, in my mind, I was trying to live, survive in what I was dealing with, even though I wasn't happy and I didn't want to keep doing it, I was still surviving in that. And the survival instinct was to not want to believe how bad things were. I didn't have broken bones. I wasn't bruised up, but I'd be afraid to come home. And this woman, she was like, strangling could have killed you more quickly than broken bones and bruises. And it was like, huh. And again, on the outside, it's so obvious, but when you're in it, you're just surviving. So I still didn't leave right away. I'll be honest. I still stuck around.
Well, you stuck around for 5 years, you said, right?
Yeah. So the aha moment was realistically, I was working a second job. He had quit his job as he was working in sales. A lot of salespeople, I find. He was a very good salesperson. But he had quit his job and he was working as a bartender, waiter, whatever. And I was working a second job. I was a teacher, and then I was doing whatever other stuff I could do on the side. And he sent me a text message and told me he quit his job. And I had been paying all of the bills. I'd been paying for everything. I was the breadwinner. Yeah. And he told me he quit. And I was like, please just go and get your job back. Apologize that you lost your temper and you quit, but go back and get the money. And he said, just like typical, I'm not going to repeat the word, blank, Stephanie, not to support her husband. And I looked at the text message while I'm working on a Saturday. And I was like, you know what? Forget you. Like, I've done anything and everything to possibly make this work, and it's not working. And a friend of mine had said to me just a few weeks prior, said, if you ever need a place to stay, come and stay at my house.
And that stuck with you.
And I called her up and I said, is that still good? She said, yeah. I said, okay, I'm taking my stuff tomorrow and I'm moving in.
Yeah. So, if looking back, like you, in a minute, you would have said, okay, after that night, I'm out of here. Right. And I think it's important for women to know, like, you kind of hung in there 5 years, which was kind of dangerous too, because
Super dangerous. Yeah, because he strangled me again. He
Yeah.
strangled me again, and he would put me in very bad. He would leave me on the side of the road if he didn't like what I said. He would drop me off on the side of a highway and leave.
Wow. So, I mean, I think like this is a learning lesson for women to know that that's an instant red flag. And when you're having those kind of like physical altercations, I think, and you're more of an expert, but out, you're done. It's let's go. We're over. It's not going to get better.
Abuse. I had a friend of mine who helped women as well heal from toxic relationships. She gave this example, and I think it's so good. The abuse is like levels of cancer. So, you've got the subtle stuff, you've got the cursing out, you've got the physical, the physical stuff, the sexual stuff. And like, so there's the different stages. Once you get to physical stuff, that's stage 4. Like, you got get out of there.
Yeah.
There's no going back. Even cursing, like, I have some people that are like, well, cursing is okay. Sometimes you lose your temper. You should be cursing at your partner, and your partner shouldn't be cursing at you. My current husband and I couldn't imagine. We don't speak that way to each other. If there's an issue, we'll talk about the issue. Even if we're frustrated, we talk it through, and then we move on from it. Where there's no name calling and hurtful words and all those things. We talk it through like two adults, even if sometimes we're agitated, we do talk it through. There's never a possibility of there being physical violence.
Yeah.
So that should not be in your relationship, period.
You know what? No one brings that up. I think that's a really good point. I want to spend a little time on that because I think it's almost the gateway to many bad things happening and snowballing. And just like you with your husband, I kind of have that rule too. Like we're never talking to each other like that. It's degrading, it's disrespectful, and it's a bad habit to use swear words or call someone a bitch or whatever. And once you get into that, I think it just leads you down a very unhealthy path. And that the thing that you have to have in a relationship is, admiration and respect for each other. And that will erode that so fast, more than you know. And I think people kind of discount that, like, well, so you get mad and so you swear and you say this, not that big of a deal. But to me, it is the gateway, and that you have to stop right there.
100%. I told my ex-husband, don't call me a see you next Tuesday. Don't call me, don't tell me that I'm sleeping around with people, whatever. Don't call me those names. And as soon as he would get mad, those were the first words he would use.
Because he knew that was going to get your buttons.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, and I agree. I think, we have this idea, and I think that movies, music, entertainment, poor knowledge of healthy relationships to begin with. So many other people are not in healthy relationships. We see that as a common ground, as a common place. But could you imagine talking to your best friend that way?
No.
Your best girlfriend. We forget that romantic relationships is supposed to be your best friend that you get to have sex with.
Yeah.
Like that's literally what it's supposed to be. But for so many people, as soon as you get into the sexual part of it, we forget that we're also supposed to be friends, and we allow these things to continue. Where if a best friend was doing that, we'd be like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be around someone who talks to me that way. And we would end that relationship, most of us, but we allow more in the romantic relationships.
Yeah, we do. And it's so weird. It's so counterintuitive because you would think you're being so intimate with this person on so many different levels that you wouldn't, like, you'd guard that. But yeah, I think sometimes it gives such a level of comfort that you get sloppy or lazy, and it's just not acceptable. So, having said all that, if someone is kind of in these relationships, are there some things they can do to kind of get themselves on a healthier path and get out of this toxic relationship?
So, I mean, get help. 100%. I mean, I had a
Tell
background.
someone, right? Like you kept it a secret
I
because
kept
you're
it a secret.
embarrassed.
I was a certified crisis counselor. You know, I had a double master's degree. I had all these different degrees, all these things. It has nothing to do with your intelligence. Because when I broke up with my first long-term boyfriend, that was not quite as bad. There was still bad, not quite as bad as my first husband. I thought, you know what? I'm just never going to do that again. But if that's what your home feels like, if that's what feels normal and natural to you, then you will automatically gravitate to that. So when I got into the relationship with my first husband, it was like, he was like the worst of every relationship that I ever had. So number one, 100%, you got to get help. You've got to be honest, let people know what's going on. And again, some of our family and friends are not the healthiest themselves.
Right.
So just telling family and friends doesn't always help, because I would start thinking like, wow, it's really bad. But then at that point, I had a lot of really toxic friends as well. So I'd go hang out with them, and they were a mess themselves. So that wasn't going to help me at all. So you have to get that professional. I had a coach and a therapist. I love, as a coach, I love when people also have done work with therapy, because coaching and therapy are different. Coaching is, let's help you get to this point. Therapy is, let's help you figure out why you got to this point. You know, so the combination together, it's like working the muscle from different angles. You're getting someone to hold you accountable and keep pointing you in the right direction, while the therapist is really about looking backwards so that we don't do it again. You need to do that, not jump into another relationship, or you're going to repeat those same patterns. So 100% do that. One of the things that I suggest with our clients is, you know, there's a bit of relearning that we have to do. And again, what comes natural is what has gotten us to this point. So when we're doing something that's different, it doesn't feel natural. It feels uncomfortable, which is why, you know, coaching is so important, because we're doing things that are out of our comfort zone. I know that you are doing the work that you need to be doing. If you're like, Stephanie, I feel a little bit off by this. I'm like, perfect. I don't want you totally out of comfort zone, but there should be a little bit out of comfort zone at the very least, because that means we're doing something different.
You're transforming. Yeah.
So really getting to know who you are, getting to know why you got into this to begin with, like what happened, what allowed you to stay in toxicity and not leave. Because again, I was saying like, I don't want to do this, but I kept doing it.
Right.
So why do we do this? We need to figure that out. We need to figure out who we are, because most of us, again, have put our needs and wants on the back burner for so long. We don't know who we are.
Right.
So we have to focus on that. And then we really have to relearn communication. We have to relearn, you know, trusting our gut, because a lot of the times our gut told us ahead of time that this was not good, but we ignored it because we didn't trust ourselves. And we have to relearn the difference between fear, like fear of the unknown. I might be alone for the rest of my life. I don't know if I can do this, whatever, to the gut instinct of, I got to get out of here and I got to figure it out. Right. So we've got to figure out the difference between those two things. And then we have to just really create that life. All those things that you've ever wanted to do, go and do those things. Figure out what you really love, who you really are, what you want to do with yourself, because each and every person has an amazing, beautiful gift inside of them, but you're not going to be able to show that to the world and give that gift if you're in survival mode. Yeah. Every single time when I have clients, when they go through the process and they break that trauma bond, and now all of a sudden they're done with the withdrawals and they're done with this ex, and they're looking at themselves, they're like, oh my gosh, I have so much energy. Yeah, I have so much energy to do all these things. Why is that? I'm like, because you were using, it was all being used up before you even got to use it. Right. So you were functioning as a professional, doing these great things while having a lead weight attached to you. Now we've cut that off, and now all of a sudden you're like, whoa, look at all the things I can do. Yeah, and that's purely, awesome. And that's where you need to be. That's where the zone of genius. But the good thing is that when you get there too, you'll be a bit more protective of it. So when you do meet people, when you do really create a life that is filled with adventure and love and excitement and all those great things, because you feel empowered to create your life, create what you want, you're going to be more protective of it. So when people come around and you think about dating again, you're not going to lower your standards. You're going to have higher standards and really know what you want and need.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think one other thing to this is also having boundaries, knowing that there are boundaries. And the one we just talked about, if you guys are talking to each other in a certain way, and the person, like, you have to look at yourself too. It has to start with you. If you're using swear words, that has to stop. If there's any physicality, that has to stop. Like, I think you have to have those boundaries, and you have to know kind of what the checklist is. And you also have to know that when it's time to, like, say, okay, I've got to go. This is not something I want to stay into.
Yeah, and boundaries go along with communication. So, that's, and you have to trust yourself to be able to enforce them. Because if you don't feel like I didn't know what a boundary was till I was 34.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't learn that. I have a choice of what I can say, what I can do, who I can spend time with. Like, I didn't understand what that was.
Yeah.
And so boundaries is part of being able to feel like you deserve to communicate your wants and needs with someone and enforce it. Because a lot of times too, people will stay because they're afraid.
Yeah.
They're afraid of so many different things, but we've got to be able to heal all of that. And so that we can move forward.
Yeah. Because I know, like, for you and for me, like, not for a second would I stand for, a lot of this stuff that you hear about. It'd be like, what? No way.
Yeah.
And so you want people to get to that point, right, where the bar has been raised. So we are running out of time. Before we go, I wanted you to talk a little bit about your book. Is that something they can pick up? Where can they find it? And what's in the book that can help them?
Sure. So my book, Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt, is all about my story of overcoming toxic relationships. I go into detail talking about my wedding night, talking about previous relationships and how I got there. And, just talk about the struggle and what I had to learn. And then I also share some other stories of other people who had been in toxic relationships and were able to overcome it. So it's really meant to inspire. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's some tips and tools of what you can do if you're currently in one or if you're out of one, specifically some things you can do. And then I have a workbook that goes along with it. They're both called Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt. The workbook is really great for you to start taking action. So you get that workbook. There's actually there's prompts, there's responses, and it's really all steps that we take even our clients through to help really rediscover who you are. Because that's really what we're all about. We want you to rediscover who you are so that you can create the best for yourself, so that you have that adventure, you have that excitement. So that's what the workbook is about. It's available on Amazon. Okay. You can look up Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt. And the full name is Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt, Strategies, recognize and overcome toxic relationships so you can live your best life now. So you can look that up. It's on Amazon, or you can just go to my website, beinglovedshouldn'thurt.com, and you can order it directly from there, and I'll sign it for you. Okay, great. And then you provide services too. Do you want to talk a little bit about that if someone is going through something and needs help? Sure. So I actually also have a podcast. It's called Toxic Love Transformation. It's available on iTunes, all over the place. But if you go to my website, toxiclovepodcast.com, it'll show you exactly what to do, and it'll take you right there so that you can have a listen. But my husband and I actually work together in helping women heal. We have one-on-one clients. We have group coaching clients. My husband does something which is really, really cool. David is a Reiki master teacher, and he also does something called Psyche, which is in the same family as NLP or EMDR, but people see results oftentimes in one session. So what he does with them is, and this is great for literally any area of your life. It doesn't just have to be romantic relationships, but anything where there's subconsciously something holding you back. So if you feel like, I'm not good enough, it's not possible for me to change, all the good guys are taken, there's no good guys out there, whatever those negative thoughts are that you're having, he can help you reframe them so that the subconscious now changes from that negative thought, and now you automatically go to the positive thought. So it is possible for me to create the life of my dreams. It is possible for me to have the healthy body, whatever it is that we've talked about that. That's another really good point about learning to manifest the life you want to have. Yes. And living in that positive realm. Mm-hmm. That's really awesome too. Wow. What a great, thing to complement what you're doing. Well, we laugh a little bit because it's a little bit more, that we have that male-female synergistic relationship, and he's a little bit more on the spiritual side. So we kind of joke around, if he didn't have me to ground him, he'd be like off in the ether floating away. And then I'm a little bit more the more grounded one. I have the spiritual side, but I'm definitely more like experience, concrete examples, concrete steps, or everything else. David has that too, but it also has the Reiki and the Psyche, which helps. He's very much into the manifesting, very much into talking about mindset. So between the two, the yin and the yang, we really get to help people in different ways. Some people are a little bit more, prone to want to talk more to David, and some a little bit more to me. And, oftentimes it's great because we'll laugh, or sometimes we will message our clients, because our group clients have unlimited coaching with us, and they'll post a question. We'll respond at the same exact time and have almost the same answer. We're like,
wow, that's interesting. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. And it was just so full of great information. And I hope that people will reach out to you if they need the help. And I hope that our viewers will have some pickups from this and will have some takeaways that will help them in their lives.
And one last thing, I want everyone to hear, you are way stronger than you realize. No matter how much you've experienced, no matter what you've done in your life, you can decide today to create something different for yourself.
Yeah, so true. Thank you for ending with that. So thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're signing off. Take care, everyone.